My name is Eliza Thornton. I'm 43, living in Billings, Montana, and I'm finally telling the story I swore I'd never speak out loud, because silence is what my family has always fed on. Yesterday, I visited my best friend Mike in the hospital. The air in that room was thick with disinfectant and regret. When I opened the door, my stomach dropped. Mike looked like someone had tried to erase him. One eye swollen shut, his lips split, bruises blooming up his arms like dark flowers. The second he saw me, he tried to smile, like the pain was just a joke between us. "I look pretty terrible, don't I?" he whispered. "But it was worth it, Eliza." I sat beside him, and my hands trembled as I adjusted the blanket near his ribs. I already knew what happened before he explained. It's always the same story. Family, pride, someone crossing a line and calling it discipline. Mike told me a relative had insulted his 16-year-old daughter, and he'd swung first. "I couldn't let it slide," he said. "Not when it was my kid." I nodded like I understood. Because I did. Driving home, the highway lights streaked across my windshield like comets, and I felt the past rise up the way smoke does. Quiet at first, then suffocating. 3 years ago, I stood up to my own family to protect my child. And the price wasn't a black eye or a bruise. The price was watching my parents choose my brother over my son, in front of everyone. The story happened on my 40th birthday at the end of June 2022. People say 40 is a milestone, like you wake up wiser, like you suddenly know what matters. I did learn what mattered. I just didn't learn it gently. I hadn't wanted a party. 40 felt like a number. I wanted a quiet dinner, maybe downtown, just me and my boyfriend and the kids, then home to a movie. Cozy, safe, simple. But my boyfriend, Gavin, has always been the kind of man who believes joy is something you schedule before life steals it. One evening in May, we were sitting on the back porch after dinner, and he rested his hand on my shoulder like he was making a promise. "You deserve one night where people show up for you," he said softly. "A real gathering." I laughed and told him no, not because I hated parties, because I hated being watched. My family had a way of turning celebrations into auditions, where someone always failed and the whole room pretended it didn't notice. But Gavin didn't fight me head on. He did something smarter. He recruited my kids. That Sunday morning, Lucas and Mia walked into my office like a tiny, coordinated invasion. Lucas held a homemade card that read, "Happy birthday to the most amazing mom in the world. Let us throw a party worthy of you." Mia stood beside him, eyes wide and hopeful, saying she'd already picked out the desserts I liked best. And I felt my defenses collapse the way they always did when it came to my kids. I told myself, one night, just one normal night. So we planned it. Backyard, string lights, food. Gavin handled the menu with the calm confidence he uses at work. Lucas got obsessed with decorations and even made a sign that said 40 years of excellence to hang at the entrance gate. Mia made paper flowers for the tables, her fingers sticky with glue and pride. The guest list wasn't huge. My parents, George and Barbara, my brother Andrew, his wife Christina, and their son Jason, who was 15 at the time. Also Uncle Kevin, my dad's brother, and my cousins Justin and Brandon with their families. A few close friends, a couple colleagues. Everything was smooth. Too smooth. The day before my birthday, after we finished cleaning, I stood alone in the backyard. The Montana sunset painted the distant mountains orange-red. The string lights hung like tiny stars waiting to be switched on. For a moment, I actually believed in the version of my family I'd invented, where my parents were proud of me, where Andrew could behave, where my kids could laugh without watching over their shoulders. I remember thinking maybe we made it, maybe we're okay now. I didn't know I was standing in the calm center of a storm. The party started at 5 p.m. Uncle Kevin arrived first with Justin and Brandon and their kids. They brought warmth with them, easy smiles, loud laughter, the kind of presence that makes you breathe deeper. Gavin opened a beer near the grill, and my dad immediately drifted over like he owned the barbecue. He offered advice without being asked, the way he always did, like every space I built still belonged to him somehow. My mom walked into the kitchen and started rearranging things, not because she needed to, because it calmed her to take control. When Andrew arrived with Christina and Jason, my stomach tightened before I could stop it. Andrew hugged me like we were close, like we had history without scars. His smile was sharp and too practiced. "Happy birthday, sis," he said. I smiled back because my kids were watching. Jason barely acknowledged me. He scanned the yard like he was looking for something to claim. Within minutes, he found Lucas and Mia near the ping-pong table. The kids started playing, the sound of the ball snapping back and forth, mixing with music from the speakers Lucas had set up. For a while, it looked like the dream. Dinner began. Fragrant grilled meat, fresh salads, the desserts Mia had been planning all week. People raised glasses. Uncle Kevin tapped his wine glass and gave a toast. 40 years, he said warmly. And look at you, Eliza. A home you built, a family you protected. I couldn't be more proud. My throat tightened. I glanced at Gavin, and he gave me that small, steady look like, see? You're loved. At around 6 o'clock, I was standing near the buffet table talking to an old college friend about a project, laughing a little louder than normal, like my laughter could keep the night safe. Then, a scream tore through the yard. Andrew, stop right now! The sound came from the far end of the backyard, near where the kids' bikes and toys were kept. My conversation cut off like someone sliced a wire. The music kept playing, cheerful and wrong. I turned, and the scene at the edge of my yard stole the air from my lungs. Andrew was standing there with a baseball bat gripped in both hands. His face was red with rage, and Justin and Brandon were grabbing his arms, trying to wrestle him back like he'd turned feral. In that frozen heartbeat, I saw something on the grass. A small body curled in on itself. Lucas, my son. And I didn't hear the music anymore. I only heard my own heartbeat, pounding like it was trying to warn me. I ran. I ran so fast the world blurred. And when I reached them, I saw Lucas clutching his ribs, his face twisted in pain, and Andrew's eyes locked onto him with a look I will never forget. A look that said, he deserved it. I opened my mouth to scream my son's name, and Andrew lifted the bat again. I don't remember screaming, but I must have, because my throat burned as I lunged forward. Andrew! The name ripped out of me like it had claws. Justin and Brandon were still fighting to hold him back, their shoes digging into the grass, but Andrew twisted hard, rage giving him a strength that didn't belong to him. The bat whistled through the air. It didn't hit Lucas again, thank God, but the sound alone was enough to shatter something inside me. I didn't think, I didn't calculate, I reacted. I grabbed the bat with both hands and wrenched it out of Andrew's grip. The metal vibrated against my palms, buzzing with violence that hadn't finished speaking yet. Andrew laughed. Actually laughed. You raised him wrong, he snarled. Selfish little... I swung. Not at his head, I didn't aim that carefully. The bat slammed into his shoulder with a crack so loud the yard went silent all at once, like the world itself flinched. Andrew screamed. He dropped to his knees, clutching his shoulder, his face collapsing from rage into raw pain. Christina came running from the house, shrieking his name, her heels sinking into the grass as she knelt beside him. Oh my God, Andrew, what happened? Jason appeared behind her, strangely calm, too calm. He looked at his father, then at me, and said in a flat voice that still haunts me, Annalisa attacked Dad with a baseball bat. That sentence landed harder than the blow I'd just delivered. Christina's head snapped up, her eyes locked onto mine, wild and furious. She shoved me in the chest so hard I staggered back a step. What is wrong with you? She screamed. I will not let this go. Before I could answer, a sharp crack exploded across my face. My head snapped to the side. For a split second, I didn't understand what had happened. The taste of blood flooded my mouth, metallic and hot. Then I saw my father standing in front of me. His hand was still raised. His face was cold. How dare you hit your brother, George said, his voice low and furious, like I was the criminal here. My mother stepped beside him, her mouth tight with disgust. Do you have any idea how shameful this looks? She hissed. In front of everyone? I stood there, stunned. My son was on the ground behind me, curled around broken ribs, and my parents were yelling at me. No one asked if Lucas could breathe. No one checked his back. No one said his name. Something hollow opened in my chest, spreading fast and cold. Did you even look at him? I demanded, my voice shaking. Andrew hit my son with a baseball bat. For a moment, there was silence. Then Justin stepped forward, his face hard. Andrew hit Lucas first. Brandon and I saw everything. Brandon nodded. He came back with the bat on purpose. My parents froze. Their eyes finally drifted past me, to the grass. Lucas tried to move. A small sound escaped his throat, half groan, half sob. Gavin was already kneeling beside him, his hands hovering uselessly, terrified to touch without hurting him more. Mia stood nearby, crying silently, her hands clenched into fists. My mother's voice softened suddenly, syrupy and fake. Lucas, sweetheart. Tell Grandma what happened. Gavin helped Lucas sit up just enough to speak. My son's face was pale, his breath shallow. He didn't say anything, Lucas whispered. Uncle Andrew just came up with the bat. I tried to run. Gavin gently lifted Lucas's shirt. A collective gasp rippled through the yard. A deep purple bruise stretched across Lucas's ribs, already swelling, already ugly. The imprint of the bat was unmistakable. That was it. The last thread snapped. I turned to Gavin, my voice hoarse. "Call 911. Police and ambulance, now." My mother shrieked. "Wait, don't do that." My father nodded urgently. "We can handle this as a family. The police will make this a spectacle." I looked at them, really looked. "My son was assaulted with a weapon," I said slowly. "This isn't a family disagreement, it's a crime." Gavin stepped away, phone already to his ear, his jaw set. Christina clutched Andrew, whispering frantically. Jason stood a few feet away, his expression unreadable. The yard felt poisoned. Conversations had died. Laughter was a distant memory. Sirens wailed in the distance. And as I knelt beside my son, holding his trembling hand, I realized something terrifyingly clear. The people who were supposed to protect us had already chosen the other side. The ambulance lights painted my front yard red and blue like a crime scene, which, I realized numbly, it was. The paramedics moved fast, too fast. One team knelt beside Lucas, their voices calm but urgent, while another checked Andrew's shoulder. Watching them split like that made my stomach twist. My son and the man who hurt him, side by side like equals. They weren't equals. Lucas cried out when they shifted him onto the stretcher. The sound ripped straight through me. I grabbed his hand, squeezing as gently as I could. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Gavin hovered close, his face tight with contained fury. Mia clung to his arm, shaking. My parents stood a few steps back, whispering to a police officer like they were negotiating a parking ticket. "This will ruin us," my mother kept saying. "Everyone will talk." Not once did she look at Lucas. At the hospital, the fluorescent lights were brutal. Lucas was taken straight into imaging. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and fear. When the doctor finally came out, his face told me everything before he spoke. "2 broken ribs," he said. "Severe bruising. No internal bleeding, but he'll need time." My knees nearly buckled. Gavin caught my elbow before I fell. Lucas was wheeled into a private room, wrapped in bandages that made him look smaller than ever. When he saw me, his eyes filled. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I ruined your birthday." That broke me. I pressed my forehead to his and shook my head. "You didn't ruin anything. I failed you by thinking that party was safe." A knock sounded at the door. A female police officer stepped in, followed by a woman in professional clothes with a badge clipped to her belt. "This is Diane Carter from Child Protective Services," the officer said gently. "We just need to ask a few questions." Lucas looked at me, scared. I nodded, forcing a calm I didn't feel. Diane pulled up a chair, keeping her voice warm, letting Lucas tell the story in his own time. Jason taking the bike, Andrew returning with the bat, the threat, the swing. When Diane asked why Lucas refused to lend the bike, he answered without hesitation. "Jason broke my controller before, and my skateboard. He never said sorry." Diane wrote everything down. When they left, the room felt heavy, but safer. Someone had finally listened. A week later, Lucas came home. We tried to make things normal again. Pancakes, soft voices, no sudden movements. Then the doorbell rang. Gavin looked through the window and froze. "Eliza, it's Andrew." My heart slammed into my ribs. I told Gavin to take the kids into the back room. Then I opened the door. Andrew stood there with his arm in a sling, his expression smug. He held out a thick envelope. "I'll give Lucas $50,000, he said quietly. "Get him to change his story." For a second, the world went silent. Then something in me went cold. "You're done," I said, and slammed the door in his face. I didn't know then that the security camera had caught everything. But Andrew was about to learn that some lines, once crossed, leave scars the truth can't hide. I stood there for a long second after the door slammed, my palm still pressed against the wood, my heart pounding so hard it made my ears ring. $50,000. That's what my brother thought my son's truth was worth. Behind me, the house was silent. Too silent. The kind of quiet that only exists when children are holding their breath in the next room, trying to be brave because they think the adults need them to be. I didn't turn around right away. I needed a second to steady myself, because if I went back there shaking, Lucas would see it, and he'd think he'd done something wrong. I finally walked down the hall. Gavin was sitting on the edge of the bed with Lucas and Mia, his arm around both of them. When Lucas saw my face, he knew. "Was that Uncle Andrew?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said. I didn't lie. I never would again. What did he want? I crouched in front of him so we were eye level. He wanted to make a bad choice instead of a good one, I said, and I told him no. Lucas swallowed. "Am I in trouble?" That question hurt worse than the broken ribs. I shook my head immediately. "You didn't do anything wrong, not one thing." That night, after the kids fell asleep, Gavin and I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, the glow from the stove clock the only thing cutting the darkness. "They're not going to stop," Gavin said quietly. "Your parents, Andrew, they'll pressure you every way they can." He was right. The calls started the next morning. My mother cried. My father lectured. Christina accused me of destroying her family. Jason sent a text saying I was overreacting and ruining everything. Not one of them asked how Lucas was healing. Then the police called. They told me they'd reviewed the footage from our security cameras, not just the attack, but Andrew standing on my porch, holding the envelope, speaking clearly into the lens he didn't realize was there. Attempted witness bribery. A felony. The trial date was set faster than I expected. The night before court, Lucas sat at the kitchen table doing homework, his movements careful, slow. He looked older somehow, quieter. "Mom?" he said suddenly. "Yes. Are Grandma and Grandpa going to hate me forever?" I closed my eyes. "They're making their own choices," I said carefully, "just like Uncle Andrew did, and those choices aren't your fault." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't fully believe me. Neither did I. The courtroom was packed. Andrew sat at the defense table in a tailored suit, his injured shoulder hidden beneath fabric like it erased what he'd done. Christina sat behind him, lips pressed tight. Jason stared straight ahead, refusing to look at us. My parents sat with them. That was the moment something finally, permanently died inside me. When the prosecutor played the video, Andrew swinging the bat into Lucas's back, the room gasped. Someone actually cried out. Lucas testified next. He stood straight, voice steady, answering every question. When the defense attorney tried to paint him as disrespectful, as difficult, Lucas didn't waver. "I said no," he said simply. "That doesn't mean I deserve to be hit." Then came the final blow. The prosecutor played the porch footage, Andrew holding the envelope, his voice low, clear, calculating. "I'll give him 50 grand. Just change the story." Christina covered her face. My father went pale. The judge didn't. The verdict came down hard. Andrew, 5 years in prison, $100,000 compensation, assault with a weapon, witness bribery. Me, 1 year suspended sentence, $40,000 compensation, mitigating circumstances. When the gavel fell, I didn't feel relief. I felt empty. In the hallway, my father stopped me. "Remember this day," he said coldly. "You chose this." I looked him in the eyes. "No," I said, "you did." And I walked away. Stop! Part 6. 3 years later, the price of peace. 3 years have passed. Lucas is 17 now, taller, stronger. He still winces when the weather turns cold, but he never complains. Mia is 15, fierce. She doesn't tolerate injustice quietly anymore. Andrew is still in prison. My parents and I no longer speak. Uncle Kevin, Justin, and Brandon are the only family who remain, and they're enough. Sometimes I think about that birthday, about the string lights, the paper flowers, the moment before the scream, and I don't regret what I did. Because protecting your child isn't about choosing family over blood. It's about choosing what's right over what's easy. And I would make the same choice again, every single time.